Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Welcome to another episode of Tech Tuesday. I know this looks a little bit different. We are recording this at the Senior Living Executive Conference in Nashville. It is my favorite thing to be able to sit side to side with somebody on a live stream. This is only maybe the second, third, fourth time I've been able to do it, but it always makes the conversation better. Today, my guest is
Raphael Rubens, founder of Candid.
And we are going to talk about what he's doing, how he's changing the world in just a moment right after this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Well, Raphael, this is really great. So talk to me about what Candid, used to be MemoMate, does. What I'm really interested in is, what's your passion?
Sure.
How are you changing the world of senior living?
Sure. So let me first explain what we're doing, and then we'll speak about the passion.
Okay.
So what Candid is doing is that we essentially help senior living operators communicate with their most important stakeholders, residents, family members, and staff members. And we focus predominantly on two use cases. Number one is job interviews. What does it mean? We integrate with any HR system that senior living communities use. We interview candidates the second they apply, and afterwards we schedule meetings for them and we predict their retention. I can speak about the results in a second. And the second piece of our product is satisfaction surveys, where we use AI phone agents and text messages to gather feedback from residents, family members, and employees. And we provide our customers with insights on multiple layers, on an individual layer, on a community layer, on a portfolio layer, and an industry layer. So that's a little bit about the product. And I didn't wake up one day thinking that I wanted to build like a talent solution for senior living communities. It started a little bit with a personal story. My grandparents were in an assisted living. And after my grandfather passed away, my grandmother wanted to write a biography about her life. She asked the Life Enrichment team to help her. Unfortunately, nobody was available. And then she put me on a guild trip and say, Raphael, be a good grandson, help me with this project. Yeah. And should I talk more? Okay.
Keep going. Yep.
Help me with this project. And I said, you know what? I asked my co-founder, who is a software engineer, I said, hey, can't you build an AI autobiographer for my grandma? I can call her, interview her, etc. So he built that for her, and I noticed that my grandmother was speaking for hours with this AI over the phone. And she was saying, quote, whoa, this really helped me to improve my memory. And I thought this was a really interesting point, and I thought maybe I should offer this to senior living communities. Right. But I don't have any background in healthcare, senior living, or whatsoever. And then it turned out that my neighbor from where I live, that his family owns a chain of senior living communities, Wingate Living. You interviewed them a couple of weeks ago. And I told him, hey, I have this idea, biographies, older adults. Can I live in one of your buildings for 2 months to do a research study? And that's how it happened.
So did you go live in this building?
I lived in Wingate Living in Needham for almost 2 months.
So I know that's sort of, we're going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I have to I have to know what it was like to live in senior living for 2 months. And I will tell you that I've stayed in a number of senior living communities over the last few years. Maybe, I think the most has ever been 3 or 4 nights. And it's usually when I'm attending a conference or I've got meetings with the executive. So, it's very short term. And I kind of live as a VIP. So I always get the best treatment, right? Yeah. So, but if you're there for 2 months, that's sort of like, you're like the baby resident.
Well, I'm always joking. I said I wish that the girls of my age would love me as much as the residents there. But it was honestly it was a fantastic experience. Like from an anthropological point of view, like I saw how actually people live in those communities, and also just learned a lot about myself and about the product. So I came in with a hypothesis. I thought I read all the research reports. I saw people are super tech savvy here in the United States, and I said, well, people will be able to use my product in a second. So let me just explain a little bit more about my experience there. So I just arrived there, with my suitcase. They gave me a room. It was a beautiful facility, community, I have to say. And the first week I was just observing. I said, what do these people do in a day to day? I joined the ED meetings. I joined everything. It was basically an internship. And then after 1 week, after I understood what's happening there, I did a presentation for all of the residents, and I told them, hey, you can use AI to document your life stories. Who's interested to try this out? This was literally 3 months after ChatGPT was released. And I had a group of residents that wanted to try this out and a group that didn't. And with those group of residents that wanted to try this out, I did a research study. And I gave them a survey developed by the World Health Organization where I asked them some questions about do they feel lonely, do they feel happy, etc., etc. And I gave them that survey before they engaged with our AI over the phone. I gave them that same survey immediately after they engaged with our AI over the phone to see if there were any short-term improvements.
Mm-hmm.
And then I gave them the same survey 2 months later to see if there were any longer-term improvements. And I compared those results to a control group of residents that didn't want to speak to an AI. And then we saw, hey, whoa, residents reported a significant reduction in loneliness, an improvement in memory. And that's how we wrote a case study. We got our first investment coming in. But from a business point of view, Steve, I realized that the biographies, it's a beautiful idea. It helps people collect their life stories, and that vision is very close to me. But I understood that from the perspective of the operators, it's nice that the residents have a life story, but they're looking at two things. Is this generating revenue for me, or is this solving my staffing issues? And at that point, we understood that we needed to make a pivot from a business point of view.
Well, I was going to say, and of course, there are a lot of platforms out there that will help people tell their stories and collect their life stories, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a very, very competitive market, and it's interesting you made that observation early, because I very often I'll talk to solution provider companies, and they say, "Oh, I've got this great thing. All we have to do is connect with the operators, and they're going to turn around and sell it to the residents for us."
Yeah.
And I go, "You have no idea. You're smoking crack. That just won't happen. The community has to get some value out of it, right?"
Well, I have to be honest with you. I don't smoke crack, but this was
and you figured it out though.
But this was the hypothesis that I had earlier. I said, it's so easy to use. They'll sell it for me. And then I realized, well, they're not a sales organization, and it's not really in their interest. Why would they sell my product? They have different things on their mind. And while I was living there, staff members were approaching me. They said, hey, the residents speak for hours with this AI. Beautiful. But can't we use your technology to make our lives a little bit easier? I said, well, what's taking you so much time? She said, well, we are required by law to conduct satisfaction surveys. And we either do this on a piece of paper, or we use a company that has call centers and do those surveys for us. And it takes them weeks to analyze that information. It's very costly. And I said, well, our AI biographer, we can also be an AI survey tool.
Mm-hmm.
We change the prompt, we analyze it differently. And you know what, let's try it out. And suddenly we just, within one click of the button, we called all of the residents, all of the family members, all of the employees. Instead of interviewing them about their life, we interviewed them about their satisfaction. We were able to analyze those results in a matter of seconds. And suddenly we saw, hey, the money comes from the compliance budget. It doesn't come from the activities budget anymore.
Right.
Hey, we're actually solving a problem not for the residents, but for the operators. Hey, we are able to automatically convert those testimonials from residents into Google reviews. This is something which is very valuable. And that's how we actually shifted from the biographies to the survey piece. And that was going very well. But then I learned some operators, they live by surveys. It's very important to them. But there's also other operators, between us, they couldn't care less. Or they prefer, let's put it differently, they don't really want to know.
Right.
And we saw that the business was growing, but not on a pace that we wanted it to grow. And then it's beautiful that I'm sitting here at Argentum exactly 1 year later, because then something really life-changing happened, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting at my booth, and I met with Adam and Phil from Solera Senior Living. We gave them a demonstration, and he said, well, those surveys, it's great. But honestly, I think we could use this for a different use case, which is going to be a game changer. I said, well, tell me more about it. They said, well, we're dealing with tens of thousands of applications per year for frontline staff, CNAs, medtechs, nurses, etc. We have 3-4 recruiters that are responsible for dealing with those applicants. We're not doing too much of a good job. We're only able to reach a fraction of them. We have high turnover. Can't we use your AI survey tool as an AI job interview? It's like, you know what? Let's try it out.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you here for a minute.
Yeah.
I want to hear the rest of the story, but this is really fascinating to me. I have a good friend of mine who is hunting for a job right now, fairly high level job. I want to be a little bit careful because I don't have permission to name, or so I got to be. So I got to do this, and I got to sort of think through as I'm talking how to do this. And she found a job that she really, really wanted, and she put together a resume and her cover letter. She sent it in, and she never heard back. And she is convinced that the reason she never heard back is because some nameless, faceless AI tool went through her qualifications and said she wasn't qualified.
Yeah.
And she's convinced that if she had a chance to do a face-to-face, that would be different.
Yeah. Listen, I don't know the details here.
Of course.
But the concept is that our AI never makes hiring decisions, and we also don't really knock out people. What we are doing is that an organization like Solera or Monarch Healthcare, where we work with, they're dealing with so many applications, tens of thousands of applications per year, and their team is simply not able to review those applicants and reach out to them. And what we are doing is that we give each applicant the exact same approach. We ask the exact same questions. We're not aware of any gender, race, socioeconomic background, things like that. So I would argue that we make the process actually more honest.
Well, and the thing I would add to that is, because I'll give you a little bit more of my story in just a minute. So I actually think you're right, and I think what happened before, right, is you'd get the first 50 or 100 applications, you go through those, and you just would be exhausted. You couldn't look at the extra, and there might be gold in that, right?
And the problem is also, Steve, is that because they're dealing with, so that's the other side of the AI page, is that your friend is saying that a faceless AI is reviewing my application, but we also see that from the job seeker side. Now with Indeed, I can just automatically apply for 200 jobs at the same time.
That's right.
I have no clue for what company I'm applying to. So what does this mean? Speed is everything. If I'm not calling you back within minutes after applying, I will start working for the company that will call me first. So if that's not going to be you, it's going to be the competitor.
Yeah.
So we just make sure that because the integration that we have, we reach out to applicants minutes after they apply. And the fun fact is that most of the applications are so between 5 p.m. and 8 a.m. So per definition, your recruitment team is not able to reach out to them. And we see that due to the high volume, recruiters, they only reach out, let's say, 3 to 5 business days in the best case scenario after a candidate applied. And, spoiler alert, that candidate is not available anymore because they'll start to work for the company. Will call them first. My applicants are not reaching out to me. I need to put on more job ads so I get more applicants. They put on more job ads, they get more applicants. They're not able to reach out to them because the volume is too high. So you're stuck in this vicious circle. And then at the other hand, you have the retention piece. Now, according to the latest research, over 50% of candidates are leaving within 90 days. So think about all the costs that has. You need to do background checks, drug tests, cost thousands of dollars per applicant. So we're making sure that we're hiring, that we reach out to the candidates minutes after they apply. We make sure that that's scheduled immediately with appropriate person, and we also make sure that candidate stays longer with your organization because of the survey technology that we have. So we can really accurately predict which candidates are most likely to be hired and which candidates are most likely to stay for whatever reason.
So I'm going to finish up my story here, and I want to actually very carefully walk through how your process works. Okay, so she and I talked about her frustration, and so I got curious, and so I got a copy of what she sent in. I went back and I looked at the job posting as it was posted, and then I took all of that and I dumped it into AI, and I said, my friend's got this concern. What do you think? And AI went in and said, well, it may very well be true that AI knocked her out, but it's because when you look at it, she didn't have this, and this, and these were the things that were being asked for in the job. Yeah. And so AI actually did its job, and it probably wouldn't have made any difference if she'd been there in person, right?
Yeah. Well, I cannot 100% confirm, but it seems pretty accurate. That if first of all, we need to know if there was actually an AI assessing her. I don't know that.
Right.
But it seems pretty obvious to me that if there's a particular job description for qualifications that you're looking for, they should tailor your resume or cover letter to fit those descriptions. And if she didn't do that, I think at least it would be good for her to try it again with your advice.
Yeah.
How did it work out?
Yeah. Well, I don't know whether she ever did that or not.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. I'm going to have to ask that question. And I do think, in fairness, particularly for high level positions, that you might have one picture of somebody you want, and then somebody else comes along and tells a very different story, and you go, oh yeah, maybe that would be better. So I think there's also, I think that she could have done a much better job, but I also think there's some legitimacy in the concern as well.
Absolutely.
So,
I agree with that.
Yeah, it's hard, right? So I plug in your system. Every single application, whether it's just an application or a resume, depending on the level, comes through. And what immediately happens is they get an email, a phone call, or what?
Yeah. So first of all, most senior living communities, they work with some applicant tracking systems, ATS. So there is Apploy, Paylocity, Hierology, all of those systems. So we integrate with the most prominent ones. And what happens is that the second the candidate submits their resume or submits their application, that will trigger a phone call. Like that will trigger a message from, let's say, the applicant tracking system to our system, in which we reach out to those candidates immediately by a phone call. But before we're doing it, this is a very important point, is that we send them a text message. Like, hey, John, thank you so much for applying for the CNA role. You will receive a phone call conducted by an AI interviewer in the next 5 minutes. And please complete this interview to move forward. And if the timing is inconvenient, you can always call us back or speak to a human. So we always inform the candidate that they will be interviewed by an AI, and that they have the option to speak to a human if they prefer.
Okay, how often? Well, I'm going to stop you here because you bring up questions and I don't want to lose them. Okay,
of course.
So how often do people say they'd rather talk to a human rather than an AI?
It's I would say between 15 and 20%.
Mm-hmm.
And it also depends a lot on geography. So if you're in, let's say, in metropolitan areas where applicants tend to be a little bit younger, let's say in their 20s, 30s,
Mm-hmm.
I see a stronger preference for speaking to an AI versus when you're more in rural areas and where the applicants are a little bit older, they prefer to speak to a human.
Okay, very good.
So that's the distinction here.
Okay.
Anyway, so what happens is they'll receive a phone call where we screen them, and though we have a set of questions that we ask, but this is in collaboration with our customers. We ask them, let's say, 5 to 6 questions, and we ask a lot of behavioral-based questions. So tell me about a time that you made a resident smile. And based on the answers that those candidates give, we transcribe everything and give a score. So hey, they scored very high on empathy, they didn't really score high on teamwork, things like that. And at the end of that interview, we either automatically schedule an in-person meeting at the facility, but some communities don't really want that. So we say, okay, we send your document, like we'll send your information to the hiring manager. We'll get back to you within 24 hours. And that hiring manager will receive an email with a summary of the conversation. They can actually listen to the recordings if they want. And we also share predictions on what is the likelihood of them being hired based on their core values, based on various factors.
So you share that with a candidate?
No, we share that with a community.
Have you ever considered sharing it with the candidate? And do you ever have? I mean, in some sense, it would almost seem like it would be really good if I were a candidate and I go through this process. And I'm going to be a little bit crude here, right? But if I suck as a candidate for that job, to be able to know that early on could potentially helpful to me.
I'll discuss this in my next meeting with my team. It's actually really good.
Yeah.
So some interview feedback.
Yeah, I think you can really help people a lot. Anyway,
Yeah.
So anyway, so the hiring manager gets that, and then typically they go to they have an interview, and
so I tell the AI I want to come tomorrow at 10 a.m. The AI checks the calendar of the hiring manager if there's an availability. If yes, we send out a calendar invite, and then they'll come. But then often the problem is that people don't show up for job interviews for various reasons. So we tend to remind the candidates often, hey, you have a job interview scheduled tomorrow. In case you can't come, they can reschedule it automatically. But the screening piece is only one part of the page, so to say. It's all about the data that we gather. And we are at this point, we've done, I would say, tens of thousands of interviews already.
Mm-hmm.
And once we merge the information that we get from the job interviews to the retention data, because we have that access also because they have payroll systems where they see this candidate has been hired, this candidate has been terminated, for what reason. And then we start to be able to make very accurate predictions. Which candidate is very suitable for this organization, and which candidate has the tendency to stay longer than 90 days. And we can even take us to a different direction where we say, hey, you just applied for community X, but honestly, based on your interview and based on your work experience, I think you should go to community Y because that organization suits you better. So that's the longer term vision here, how we can,
So that's what I really like that a lot, and because so I guess the first question that sort of comes to my mind is, do you see variability in terms of certain types of candidates actually do really well in one type of one company and not so good in another? And are you seeing those differences?
Yes, we do. What we see right now is that our main data has been focused on. So we asked them a question. Tell me about the time that you made a resident smile, or tell me about the time that you helped your teammate out in a tough situation. And we transcribe everything what they are saying, and we assess. Okay, well, like based on what they say, we give a score from 1 to 10. 1 is bad, 10 is good. And we also give arguments why that is. And in the end, what we do is that we cross-reference that to the retention data. So we see, okay, candidates that have really good team, team building skills or have empathetical skills with residents, they tend to stay longer, and we can cross-reference that, and that's very important for us.
Cool. So again, I'm looking at this, and from an employer standpoint, this is perfect. If I'm an employee, I'm looking at that and saying, I'm never going to get a job because I don't have those categories, and maybe that's legitimate. Maybe they need to go do something else, right?
Maybe. I mean, I've done many jobs in my life where I sucked at.
Yeah.
Would have been nice if we knew about it earlier.
Yeah. Me too. So how do people engage with you? How do they I want to ask you before I want to do this. So what's typical time from application to hire?
In days, you mean, or?
Yeah, in days.
It depends a lot per facility and per region, so it's very hard for me to come up with an exact number. The guideline is always around, you try to do this within 7 days. From the application to hire, and it doesn't always happen for various reasons, but we just want to make sure that candidate, the second they apply, we pull them into that facility, and we're going to make sure that they get an offer letter. That's the most critical piece. But then the next opportunity is often we're focusing mainly on frontline roles, right? Not leadership roles.
Right.
So often they don't do individual onboardings. They do this in group settings once a month or twice a month. So what happens if I hire you, Steve, just 1 day after the first onboarding is finished?
Yeah.
You still have to wait in this limbo for 2 weeks for the next onboarding session. And then a lot of people also drop off in that period.
Right.
So we're also working on constantly engaging with those candidates. Hey, we really loved you as a candidate. Reminder, you have your onboarding taking place in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Before you do this, please do your drug test and your background check. So we're really focusing on also maintaining the candidates in this limbo between the job offer and their first starting day.
So are you able to track, do you have data where you've been doing this for long enough where you go into an organization and their turnover rate is 48%, and then 6 months or a year after it's dropped to 28.
Yeah, so we published a case study recently with Solera Senior Living where we saw like a 5 to 6% reduction in 90-day turnover. Initially, it doesn't sound like too much, but if you're hiring thousands of people per year, and it costs you around $5,000 per churned employee, that 5% improvement is huge. So we're seeing significant improvements, but also the problem with turnover is that I would lie if I say that it's only because of me that your employee is staying longer or not. There's so many other variables here. Like if they work 24-hour shifts and their manager is terrible, they'll leave, and that's not really I can't really do much about that. So, but we do see that, like from the case studies that we wrote, the exact scenarios were exactly the same. The only thing that we changed was the job interview piece and the scheduling piece. We did see an improvement in 9-day turnover, which is really promising.
Yeah, that's really big dollars, right? So, and then and sort of circle back, we obviously spent most of our time on that, and that's clearly the thing that's making the biggest difference. But you're also continuing to use your tool to do surveys on both residents and family members and staff, right?
Absolutely.
So I guess I'm actually want to. We only have a couple minutes left, but I want to talk a little bit about the survey data because I'm just so interested in this. What are the things where when you get survey data and you're looking at it, of course, we're not going to talk about any organizations or anything. What are the things that are typically problematic that they get dinged on?
Dining.
Okay.
The dining is always shit.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Well, so one of the things I've heard people say, though, is that dining is the thing that people complain about more than anything else, but that people almost never move out because of dining.
That's a very interesting point. First of all, like when I lived for 2 months of Wingate Living, like I loved the food. I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
But I can imagine if I go to the same restaurant every day in my life, that at some point you get tired of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's also always what I tell my customers. Like, okay, your score for dining is pretty low, but don't worry, that's a problem everywhere. But what we're personally very interested in is the NPS score, so willingness to recommend to a friend or a family. And we always ask that question in the end. And we also are able to automatically convert those positive testimonials into Google reviews. And this is huge. We see that approximately 15 to 20% of the residents, after they leave a positive, like that 15 to 20% of the residents actually leave a Google review after they receive that question. So I think the NPS score is critical for the senior living organizations. And the problematic point is always dining.
And I assume there must be times where you see NPS scores where you want to smack your head and say, you guys got some work to do.
Yeah. So that makes it challenging as a company, because at the one hand, they're paying us, they're paying us significant sums of money to do those surveys, but if they're doing a bad job, it's hard to tell them, right?
It is.
But they pay you for your honesty.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing is that it's a very nice example. I will not share the company name, but we did one survey round where the average score was terrible. It was like 3 out of 10 or 4 out of 10. And the VP of operation had a conversation with the ED, and she started crying, like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this. I'm working so hard." But the beautiful thing is that once we gave her like the key priorities on what she should work on, she actually took that information and started to work on it. We did another survey 3 months later, and boom, we saw that the scores significantly improved. Because we're always speaking in all of those conferences, they're speaking about actionable data.
Yeah.
I don't want to have a survey score. I want to know information. What can I do about this?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty that we can deliver. First of all, we give you scores, but we also give you transcripts. Hey, anecdotes. This is what the residents are saying. And we have an internal ChatGPT, I would like to call it, where people can just ask questions. The director of dining says, "Hey, what are the key feedback items for the dining, and what is the new weekly menu that most residents will like?" And you can act on the data that we provide. And this has been so helpful for our customers.
Cool. Well, we're about out of time here. Talk to me a little bit about where people can find you, how they engage with you.
Sure. So I'm there at most of the conferences, SLEC, Senior Living 100, Argentum, or Senior Living Executive Conference right now. But you can find us on LinkedIn, Candid. You can email me on Raphael@candid.com. And if you want to reach out to me or learn more, feel free. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Great conversation.
Thank you, Steve.